The following content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not constitute means for diagnosis, healthcare advice, nor treatment. Make use of a qualified healthcare professional for such purposes.
Hi, my name is Julie. I'm going to interview Dr. Shar Ortiz.
Hello, I'm Dr. Charlene Ortiz. I'm a pre-licensed mental health counselor, and I am under the supervision of Dr. Julie Lindmer.
So my first question for you is about your job and what you do on the daily. So what are some of the things that entail the counselor role?
So one of the things, depending on which education level you are under, so for example, if you're master's or doctorate, your roles may be a little different. So on a day-to-day basis, one of the things that I usually find myself doing is doing therapy. That would include generally individual therapy. That means one-on-one clients, and also doing group therapy, meaning at least 2 people, 2 to 12 people. And usually what that involves is the group dynamics. So that could be learning how to regulate emotions, things of that nature. And I also do family therapy. That means any sort of family member, so sister, parents, and brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents. So it could include extended family. And that's usually what I do on a daily basis.
How do you make decisions about allocating time with the many demands that you might have?
So one of the things is pacing yourself, right? So for example, if you have to pace yourself in regards of what type of client you see at a certain time. So for example, if I'm going to work 8 hours and I know I may not be an afternoon person, then to make sure that maybe the presenting issues are a little bit top heavy, if possible, you should see those clients at a certain time. Or if you're an afternoon person, maybe seeing a certain type of client and during that time. And of course, you have to work with the client, right? Whatever hour is beneficial to them in order to accommodate their needs. But also you need to be concerned about how are you better going to serve them. So if you know you can serve them that kind of client in the morning, then maybe see them in the morning. One of the things that I like doing is scheduling way ahead of time. That helps me plan and allocate. Also, if there's something I can delegate, so for example, if I can ask some of the interns that work here if there's something they can do. Say, for example, a demand that I think is more fit for my supervisor or under supervision or extensive supervision, then knowing when to delegate can also help you manage your time. And planning for, basically plan for the unexpected. So for example, maybe a day you get sick, or maybe a day you have a headache and you don't feel like doing homework or something like that. So give yourself enough time to where not procrastinate and leave everything to the end of the project, because there might be things in the way during that time. So planning ahead and trying to do a little bit at a time instead of waiting, because then not only is that going to produce more stress, but also it's not going to allow you to be able to meet those goals in time and not allocating your time correctly.
Yeah, it sounds very balanced.
Mhm.
Yeah. And how do you feel about your job?
I love my job.
Yeah.
I really love my job. It's really interesting to see people change and have a better quality of life and changing into a person that they pretty much always wish they were. And because of interventions, they're able to meet those goals. So, and I love the people that I work with. We make a really good team, so that makes the job easier, right? And I love the fact that we also have interns, so it's an opportunity for everybody to get their brain juices going and learn from each other. So I absolutely love it.
What kind of records about clients or students do you keep?
It depends on the policies. So for example, in order to keep records, say with students, you should follow the FERPA regulation. And then with clients, you should follow your ethical guidelines, your local state laws, and also federal laws such as HIPAA. So whichever one provides the most privacy and it's more comprehensive, then following those laws is usually what's generally advisable. And of course, I'm not a legal practitioner, so it's, however, it is generally recommended that you follow the one that's mostly comprehensive. Generally, some of the types of records that we keep in this facility are usually intake assessments, and that includes biological data. So by that, I mean, say for example, family history and uses of substances, substance use, medication, medical history. We also include that type of record here. Any sort of notes that are taken here during sessions. We can also keep records that have been sent to us by other providers. So for example, referrals, and also records from pediatricians, primary care providers, certified nurse practitioners. So we do have other sources of information, not only what is coming out of the client's own view, but also from other providers. Sometimes we do have records from assessments, and usually we do have those results, and the raw data can also be kept here. And also any sort of art that the client might have had or conducted, or any notes that came with the art and art therapy, if you will. So those are types of data that you may find stored. And of course, they have to be locked, they have to be kept confidential. They can't be released unless those records, the client authorizes that they want the records released. So there's other clauses to that, and there's some exceptions to that, but those are usually the type of records we keep here.
In your current setting, which of the following activities are the most and the least frequently used, and why? The first one is large groups.
As a facility, we do engage in a lot of group sessions, so we do have a lot of large groups. As an individual practicing under supervision, I only have one group, and I only meet them once a month.
The next one is small group.
Usually what I do mostly is individual. As a facility, however, there's multiple small groups.
Would that include like the family therapy, a small group, or?
Considering that family would technically be considered a group, yes. So I would rank it above large groups for sure, in terms of how often I use it.
Okay. Individual counseling.
Right. So that would probably be the majority of the work that I do under supervision.
Assessment of students.
So I did used to do that. I used to be an educator in the past, and usually assessments, I would conduct one assessment a week, at least on quiz form, and then depending on the volume of the topic that we were covering, maybe every 4 weeks we would have a test, but every week we would also have a quiz and also written assignments. And another form of evaluation, we would do presentations, so PowerPoints, and we would also do lab dynamics as well.
All right, and the last one is strategies for career development.
Interestingly, part of the things that we do as a company is internships, right? So for example, that allows the interns to view what it actually looks like, right, in the real world with real clients, with real issues. And that can allow interns at the very beginning to decide, okay, is this for me? Is this not for me? Maybe this is not the setting for me, but maybe a residential setting is, or maybe a correctional setting is. So I would argue that would be the earliest form of career development. Later on, in regards to career development, I have the opportunity to work under supervision, so that allows me to develop my skills while under supervision, and also we do have the opportunity to have other types of licenses and certifications so that I can develop my career in that fashion as well.
In your current setting, which of the following problems are of the greatest concern? The first one I have is academic failure. The next one I have is family dysfunction. Then I have unwanted pregnancies, child abuse, anger management, peer relationships, racial and ethnic tension, drugs and alcohol, gang violence, or other, as in any other kind of interpretation of what you have.
I do see a lot of anger management. I say that to say that usually that's just in the surface. Usually there is another presenting issue under that. So for example, say abuse, right? So that's what's leading to, say for example, the child expressing anger because that is the way that they're showing that there is a dysfunction going on. For example, abuse, right? So I would say anger is one of the more typical ones out of that list because there are other presenting issues under that. I would argue that another really typical one that I tend to see, I wouldn't necessarily say racism, but I would say assimilation or acculturation of clients because I do speak Spanish fluently. So I do get to see a lot of individuals that either have recently immigrated from their home country and they're here in America, so they're trying to adjust to the demands, or people who have been here for many years, but there is a cultural difference between them and their children who were born and raised here. So I do see that quite often because of the type of skill set that I have, that I speak Spanish fluently and I got to live in a tropical island for 10 years. So that's where I learned Spanish. So having that opportunity to be in a Spanish speaking country, having that perspective has allowed me to see other different types of presenting issues. So a lot of issues with that. I would say those are pretty common. Peer relationships, I do see that frequently, generally, because there is a concern with the sexual orientation or gender expression of that person. So not having that peer support. So for example, they identify as gay or lesbian or transgender and then not having that peer support. Or maybe because they have very different religious views than their peers, so they may also have that difficulty. So I do see that fairly frequently.
Do you promote the counseling program to the community, faculty, and administration?
So one of the things that I particularly enjoy, I like, first of all, working with the one-on-one intern. And of course, they're not my interns, they're part of the facility as a service that we do offer, and encouraging them, say for example, if we do have an undergraduate intern, looking into graduate programs together, or viewing their specific interest or specific niche or particular skill set that they have so they can explore other career paths in terms of graduate school. And with graduate interns, say for example, providing them guidance, or if they are interning here as graduate interns, helping them with building a caseload, interventions, difficult clients, so that they notice what areas are in need of improvement. So maybe seek for more education in their own program or seek a certification or a seminar and things of that nature. Also publishing videos, so I like publishing videos so that people, for educational purposes, so that people can see this is what psychology looks like, this is what research in psychology looks like. So that's another way that I like reaching out to people as well.
How is the program funded?
So currently, and I say this as an educated guess because I don't manage the funding side of things. That will be the owner and the CEO. So currently, most of the funding actually does come from the individual, right, person. So their insurance or self-pay. We have had grants that either have been granted in the past or we're working on new grants. And also there is a potential idea for people who can be basically people who would hold stock in the company, right? So that's something that my supervisor has looked into, who's also the CEO of the company. So generally those are the means for funding.
Has the counselor sought external funding for any projects? If so, what did you look for and how?
So I personally haven't looked for any. I know that our CEO has, especially with having other potential people who would like to invest in the company as basically a community provider support here for our local community and neighborhood. But I personally have not done that.
The very last one is about what kind of records does the counselor keep about the program specifically?
So currently, one of the things that was assigned by my supervisor to myself is basically the policies with safety and security. So for example, what to do in case that we need to shelter in place, say for example if it's a natural disaster, or what to do in case of a safety situation. So for example, say or there's a fire, there's a natural disaster. So that is something that I have been working on in regards to implementing or developing at least a rough draft, if you will, what that looked like. I have been tasked to do. That's not necessarily part of the duties that I would necessarily have under mental health, but because of my experience in the military for 10 years, and which is also important to recognize that you're not only a counselor, but you also bring so much to the counseling setting. So not only because of your education, but also because of your experience. So that was the reason that was assigned to me.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
This career is not for everybody. It is pretty taxing in terms of knowing what to do, how to do it, and knowing what not to do. Because sometimes people may want to overwork themselves or want to, say, fix issues, for lack of a better term. And in reality is sometimes we want to provide that change, but it's not up to us to provide that change, right? It's up to the person in front of us to want to make that change. And knowing when to let go, knowing when you want to save the world, you want to help every person in the community, but that would not be feasible. So knowing when to let go, it's something very important.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.